grown and sexy, but clean sometimes. That's what's up. We didn't say it was a family show, so there's that. Wait, are we with that? Well, this or that? Are we?
I don't know. We all over the place.
Had to come out of retirement. These knees they was snap, cracking, and popping, like a Rice Krispie. But we made it do what it do. But I did take a couple ibuprofens afterwards, though. All right.
Mud Talk with Big T, Shay, and Miss Amy.
Can you count, suckers? Get busy, y'all. Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Suicide is the third leading cause of death among African Americans ages 15 to 24. In a study of almost 300 adults in the African American community, researchers found that Black men were very concerned with the stigma surrounding mental illness and were not open to discussing or acknowledging it. Only 26.4% of Black men ages 18 to 44 who experience daily feelings of anxiety or depression are likely to have used mental health services. African Americans are 20% more likely to have serious psychological distress than whites are. African American men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than African American women. Experts believe that social unrest, racial violence, and police brutality have played a role. Mud Talk presents Dear Black Men, an honest conversation about Black men's mental health. What's good, everybody? It's your homie Big T.
It's your boy Red.
And you are listening to the only podcast that brings you latest in music, news, and fashion, and the only show that keeps our ears to the streets. So today is a very special episode of Mud Talk. Today is called Dear Black Men, where we're having an open and honest conversation about Black men's mental health. As you saw some very deep statistics there in the intro video that we're going to get into later on today. But we do have some amazing guests with us today who have agreed to have some open and honest conversation about Black men's mental health. So today we have Mr. Blair Johnson, as we like to call him, Mr. Toledo. And then we also have Cecil here, who is a licensed therapist and counselor. And then, of course, we also have Red, who, is always with us behind the booth, but now today he's in front of the camera. And, of course, we have Mud Talk's favorite white girl, Miss Amy, who's also here in the building as well, too. Yes, I'm here too. So yes, I'm always here. Yes, I'm always here. I'm not going nowhere. So, all right. So, with that, we do have some amazing testimonies that we were able to reach out and talk to some people today, who were open to sharing their mental health journey. But we felt like today was very, very, very important to have this conversation. We know that the forefront recently has been Black men's mental health, and so we knew, hey, we need to have an episode and a conversation about this just to bring more awareness to the issue. So you were able to talk to somebody pretty cool today, Miss Amy.
Yes. So I talked to he's been on the show. He's a guest of ours. Yes. Often he comes and watches because he's my best friend, and I think he just does it for me. He's checking in great, and he's watching great. Because his testimony. We're going to watch that. He has a very interesting mental health journey that I've been able to be with him next to his side through the adult part of it. Mm-hmm. I met him. We met in about. I didn't say this in the video. So we met in 2019, and
so I can't hear you.
Oh, me?
Oh, he said bring the mic closer.
Oh, mic closer.
Hey, she do this all the time. I swear to God.
So what do you need me to do, Greg? Can you hear me now? Let's check that.
All right, we should be good.
It's hard to tell with no headphones on.
Check. Yeah, we good. I see the levels up there.
All right.
Okay. So we met in 2019, and through that time, I was able to kind of walk alongside him with his mental health journey. You're actually going to, in the testimony, you're going to hear his mental health journey, and then you're going to hear from me as somebody who is caring about somebody going through, a Black man going through a mental health journey. And it is as a friend perspective, not the fact that I work in mental health. Because it's very different when you work in mental health and when it's a friend of yours. So you're going to hear, it's going to kind of go back and forth between his story and then my as the, I don't want to say caretaker, but a friend of somebody struggling.
Absolutely. All right. Well, before we go ahead and get into the videos, let's go ahead and have our guests introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead into Greg's testimonies. We'll go ahead and start with you, Mr. Cecil.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cecil. I am a licensed mental health professional. I have been a licensed therapist now for 12 years. I work at an agency called RFS Behavioral Health. In the schools, it's called TACO. And I also do private practice as a therapist as well.
That's what's up. All right. Mr. Blair Johnson.
My name is Blair. I'm a handyman. And
Yes, he's Mr. Toledo. He's trying to be humble, but go ahead. You got a whole lot of accolades, sir.
It's kind of long, but in 6 months I will have 3 new licenses. So
That's what's up. That's what's up.
That's what's
Is
up.
that like a handyman license?
it's gonna tie into one of my other nicknames, the Property Brother. You'll see why in 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
You do it all.
That's what's up. That's what's up. All right. Well, you want to go ahead and oh, I'm sorry, Red. Yes.
You guys have talked, since you're on the panel.
I know. That's weird for me. I'm on the other side. I'm on the other side. They said Ty is the only person loud. Ooh, let me pull that mic back. So y'all got to speak up.
Should we turn that one down? I feel like maybe.
So my name is Ty Cleveland, also known as Big T, here on Mud Talk. I'm an educator. I've been in the education game for 11 years. I worked in many schools. I also used to work for Tackle. So I was able to work at Tackle at Rosa Parks and kind of see a lot of the mental health side. So yeah, I see mental health every single day in the school system. And I work with middle school kids. So I'm a middle school teacher. So yeah, I see a lot of those mental health issues.
I'm Red. I do audio engineering. I'm a music artist. I'm just an all around humble guy, also just as Blair. So I just try to stay to myself, stay peaceful, stay humble, and just live life. So this is me.
And you're also a father. Don't forget that part.
Two adorable children.
2 adorable kids. So
Cook.
I'm a cook.
I don't know if you clean. You clean? Not that I need anything cleaned. I'm just saying.
What you need to clean?
Let's start with my car.
I was about to say your car clean. Yeah,
You already know that.
definitely.
All right. Well, and Miss Amy, we can't forget you. You got to introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Amy, and I have been working in mental health for the last 11 years. Before that, I was a high school teacher, and I taught life, which was really fun. And I wanted to, while I was teaching life, I realized there was a lot more to do and as far as helping others. So I wanted to do more of the ability to work individually with kids, not just as a class. So I work with also 11 to 14-year-olds when it comes to their mental health. And, you know, sometimes it's mental health thing, sometimes it's momming. It just really depends on what they need. I have 3 kids. My oldest is 20, almost 21 in May, and he goes to the University of Cincinnati, and he is majoring in criminal justice and minoring in law, which is fine as long as he makes me rich someday. I have a almost 13-year-old daughter. She'll be 13 in May, and I have a 9-year-old son.
All right, that's what's up. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into one of the testimonies. This is Greg's story. Greg is actually watching right now. So we appreciate Greg for being open to sharing his story. And we're going to go ahead. Yes, we appreciate you, Greg. And so we're going to go ahead and get into his story right now. I know I'm holding my mic like a DJ. I know. I got to. I know. I told you I'm used to being in DJ mode. That's the problem. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get into Greg's story, and then we'll be right back here on Mud Talk.
So let me introduce myself. My name is Gregory Lassane. I'm a nurse. I'm 38 years old. I'm an MDS coordinator to be exact. I have 2 beautiful kids, and I'm a Black man in therapy.
Hey everyone, I'm Miss Amy. You might recognize me as one of the hosts of Mud Talk, but today I'm not here in that role. Today I'm here to share with you my experiences of having somebody that I care about be a black man in therapy and my perspective on what it was like as he went through and is continuing to go through his mental health journey.
I can say that growing up, I was taught like most young boys are taught. If you fall over and hurt yourself, you pick yourself up. You don't cry. Stop crying, boy. Or just not really showing emotions, period, or even just kind of being soft. And so over the years, for myself, for instance, just speaking on myself, um, it became hard because that is how I was groomed to be. I was groomed to be a man that doesn't cry, that doesn't show emotion, that holds stuff in. Never saw my father cry growing up. I never really saw my father show any type of emotions. Every once in a while, he would play with me, but for the most part, his door was always closed in the room, and so I felt secluded. I felt by myself. I felt alone. I felt closed off. And as I grew older, that's how I became, just closed off, not opening up because of the example that I had. My particular story starts way back when, and it kind of carried, me into adulthood, living with my father and my stepmother, and going back and forth to see my mother every weekend. My mom would come pick me up every Friday and would return me every Sunday. And I thought that was normal. I thought that every kid, did that. I never really get that sit down and talk about it. So that was my life as I knew it. But I will say that it did bother me because every time I left my mom, it just felt like I was leaving a piece of me, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, so it hurt, but I was tough. I mean, that's how I was raised to be, hard. Don't cry. Don't be a wuss. And a lot of that is coming from family. And my closest family, people I'm closest with right now, my aunts and grandma. I remember being a kid, and that's kind of how it was in a black household. You don't be a certain way. Um, there would be times where my stepmom and I would get into it, but I would try to tell my father, and he would never listen to me or believe me. There was mental, physical, verbal abuse on top of not being around my mom and my brother and my sister. Me being in the car when my stepmom ran over someone. I don't know if she killed the guy or not. That's just a list of some of the traumas that I've experienced. And it goes on. But you carry a lot of that being a kid, just holding all that stuff in. So as I held it in as a kid, it's affected me as I've gotten older. Um, to whereas I was shut down and trying to be a man, or the definition of what a man is supposed to be, which was just being hard, being tough, working hard, being the man. But as a kid, you don't understand that. as a kid, you kind of go on as a kid you go on what you're taught. So what you're taught is what you see. So when I was a kid, what I was taught is what I went by. What I saw is what I went by. So as a kid, I didn't speak about my troubles much. I held a lot of it in, a lot. Which is why therapy is helping now. It's helping me to understand that, hey, I wasn't wrong. I was right with how I felt and supposed to feel.
The more we got to know each other, the one thing that I noticed about Greg was that he's actually a really, really good listener. And at the time in my life, that's something that I needed. I needed somebody who would listen to me, hear me out. I didn't have that a lot. Being a helper and being in a helping profession is something that we related to. He was a nurse. I work in mental health. And, you don't often have people listening to you and helping you when you're in that situation because you're so used to helping others. And he was great. Like he's still great when it comes to listening. But the one thing that I noticed right away is that he was very, very slow to open up about his own stuff or his own emotions or certain circumstances or talk about certain parts of his life. It took a while for him to show that emotion to be able to talk about that. He's always been great at listening to me, but that is something that I will always remember is how hard it was for him to really open up about the things that he had going on in his life. One thing that we had at first that we definitely did not see eye to eye on was the importance of mental health. And I don't think it was because he was like anti mental health, like he supported me, he respected me for what I did for a living. But I was raised that it's okay. I don't even want to say that I was raised that it's okay to talk about emotions, but talking about emotions and mental health is just like normalized, I think, more in my background than it ever was in his background. And so that's the one area that I feel like we definitely did not see eye to eye when it came to when we first started hanging out and talking and becoming friends, and even honestly through a good portion of the beginning of his mental health journey.
I was with my ex-wife for I want to say 16 years. We were young when we got married, 25. There were red flags there that I chose to ignore because at the time I didn't understand red flags. I didn't understand mental health issues. There was a lot that I didn't understand. So my marriage was tough. It wasn't all bad times. There was good times too, and I received 2 beautiful children out of it, which is great. But there was a lot of internal issues between us. It got to the point where when I was working 2 jobs and I would work my second job, I never wanted to come home. I would sit in the parking lot after I got off work, or I would sit in the grocery store parking lot up the street from the house, preparing myself to go home because I've had anxiety of what I was walking into because I never knew what I would be walking into. So it was tough. It was hard. But things happen. And I feel like everything happens for a reason. And whether you believe in God or you're spiritual, whatever it may be, you are strong enough to fight it. Period. I've been divorced, separated and divorced, going on 3 years now. It was the hardest decision that I've ever had to make in my life. It came between my mental health, my kids, my marriage, everything I know. And it basically came down to what is healthy for me. And being in the marriage relationship that I was in, it was not healthy, not just for me, but for my kids as well. It just wasn't a healthy environment. And it took me many years. I was with my ex-wife for 16 years. So 16 years of going through a lot. And it wasn't all just her, but, I, you know, am partly to blame for certain things as well. But I can definitely say that when I decided to leave, and we sat down and we told our kids that, you know what, mommy and daddy are separating. When I see my little girl cry, that was so heartbreaking. It broke my heart, and I didn't know what to do. I wanted to hold her and console her and tell her that it's going to be okay, but at that moment, I didn't even know it was going to be okay. I didn't know what to expect. I went through a lot of emotions from that time up until now. I've yelled, I've cried, I've stayed up, I've done reckless behavior at times that I'm not proud of. But it was all a process.
I remember the day that he decided that him and his wife were going to separate. He had called me, and I really don't think he called me because it was like intentional, like I need to call Amy, she's going to help me through this or whatever. I genuinely think he called me out of I don't know who else to call or what else to do. And I remember when I picked up the phone, like he was crying, and that was different. And he told me about what happened and how they were going to separate. And I was like, man, like I'm really sorry. And I kind of listened to him and I heard him out. But the one thing that I will never forget about this, and I do think this goes back to his upbringing about not talking about emotions and mental health, he apologized and he was apologizing and apologizing for having emotions and showing emotions and being upset. And he apologized multiple times for crying on the phone.
That was definitely a tough time in my life. I was definitely depressed. I didn't know what was next. I couldn't see what my future would look like because I was lost. Everything that I had known, everything that I worked for was gone. So having to rebuild again. So having to rebuild is tough. And it's even tougher when you have certain demons and you have certain internal issues going on. So at the same time, you're trying to be a better person because you want to be a better person, but you don't know how to. You don't know where to start. And everything just kind of seems like there's nothing there, there's no one to help. Even though there were plenty of people there to help, but at the time, just being depressed and going through so much of what I went through, it was a hard time. I have no problem sharing my story of me drinking. I turned to alcohol. And when I say turn to alcohol, I would drink a good 12 to 18 beers a day, give or take, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. And if I didn't have beer, which I was getting beer as soon as I, got off in the morning, drinking in the morning, drinking in the afternoon, drinking at night, it was tough. Drinking and driving. I'm not I'm not ashamed of it because this is my story to tell.
I remember in the days from when he decided he was going to separate, there was something that happened, and that's kind of what pushed him to separate. Um, we were pretty much on the phone nonstop. Um, because the one thing that I said as a friend is like, and I always told him, like, I'm not leaving. I'm always going to be here. And anybody that knows me knows that that's in my personality. Like, if you're my person, I'm there for you. And I talked to him on the phone. We FaceTimed. But the one thing that I don't think I was prepared for was to watch somebody who I cared about over the days and the weeks after that start to slip farther and farther down into like a really deep depression and to kind of start to spiral. And I didn't really know what to do or what to say or really just how to help. Like I just was like, I'm just going to be there. I'm just going to be there to listen and hear him out. But it was hard. I also remember being really worried about him because he, in coping with this, was still trying really hard not to show his emotions. And the coping was turning into him turning to things like alcohol. I mean, I remember calling him and I'm like, dude, what time is it? Like, you're drinking already. Or I remember him showing me a picture of like, the amount of beer that he had drank. And I was like, man, like that's not healthy. But on the same token, like, what do I say? And it was hard because I work in mental health. Like, I should know what to say and how to help. But it's different when it's your friend and somebody you care about. I was really worried about him too because I could see that depression was starting to slip him into a place where, like, I don't know if he wanted to live anymore.
when you have someone trying to turn your family and friends against you, trying to make it seem like you're a bad man, a bad father, a bad person, and just telling everybody, family, friends, work, social media, you know, and that hurt.
And oftentimes he would be like, I mean, I'm not going to do it today, but I'm not going to tell you that I'm not going to do it. And that's really hard to hear. Now, remember, we live 10 hours away from each other. I can't be there. Like, I help people in the present, I help people in person. And so figuring out how I can support him 10 hours away was hard. And then to hear that, and I get it. Like, we all go through hard times. And, the separation turned into divorce, and the divorce turned into a custody battle. And the whole time it was like watching a friend of mine like just face these demons and not be able to help them. And I was worried. Like, I was genuinely worried because i don't I didn't necessarily believe that he wasn't going to try to kill himself. I think honestly I was worried if he wasn't going to do it intentionally, it was going to be because of the alcohol or because he got in a car accident because he'd been drinking and driving. It was really scary. It was hard. It was hard.
I got to the point where I wanted to commit suicide, and I was ready to do it. I had a plan. I was gonna I had found a bridge, and I was gonna either drive off or just jump off the bridge. People were calling me, family, friends were calling me, texting me. I was not picking up because in my head I decided that this will stop the pain. This will stop the hurt. I will be free. And I was going to go through it, and then about 10:30 at night, my daughter texted me and said, "I love you, Daddy," with a heart. And that just kind of snapped me out of it. That made me realize I need to be here for my kids.
I remember the day that he decided that he was going to take his own life. um, I'm sorry, hold on. I remember I hadn't talked to him all day, and that's not like him because remember we've been on the phone and we were calling and FaceTiming all the time, and I was really worried about him. Like, he was in a depression like no other, and he was drinking, and he couldn't tell me if he was going to be safe. And I remember this is a time when like um, his ex-wife wasn't letting him like see the kids, and he was just not in a good place. And I remember I hadn't talked to him all day, and I was trying to get a hold of him, and I just like couldn't get a hold of him, and I didn't know what to do. I remember he had turned off his location on his phone, and that was something that I was like really worried about. So I'm trying to figure out where he is. I'm blowing his messages up. I'm texting him, and finally, like around 10:30, 10:45 at night, I get this really bizarre phone call, and I like picked up immediately, and he was just bawling his eyes out, and he was drinking, and I was like, dude, I'm worried about you. Like, where are you? And remember, we're 10 hours away, and he was like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to live this life anymore. And I remember thinking, like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Because he's 10 hours away from me. I can't just go get him. And at this time, like, I knew one of his friends' names, one. And luckily it was like a kind of a unique name. And I was like, somebody has to go get him. Like, he couldn't even tell me where he was, or I don't know, maybe he chose not to. Right, and then he hung up the phone. Like, he was just like, I gotta go. And now, hindsight, I know that was because his daughter texted him. But in the meantime, I'm like blowing up his phone again, like, call me. And I searched his friend with the unique name on Instagram, and I never talked to this person in my life. I just happened to know his name. I maybe talked to him here and there, like over phone. And I messaged him and I said, hey, do you know where Greg is? And he was like, I've been trying to get a hold of him all day, and so is his mom. Do you know where he is? I said, yeah, he just called me. And I said, I need someone to help. Like, I don't know how to get him. And at the same time that I'm messaging him, he calls me back. And I was like, finally got him. I said, where are you? And he told me, because he said, that's when he told me my daughter called me. And he's bawling his eyes out. And he's like, I can't do this. And I remember texting his friend. His friend texted his mom. And I remember both two of his boys growing up jump in the car and like rushed over to the parking lot while I'm like trying to talk to him and explain to him that he's worth it. Like, he's worth living for. That was hard. I almost lost my best friend that night. But I think everything happens for a reason, and this baby girl saved his life, and he called me and he let me help him. I know that was a turning point. I know it was a turning point. It wasn't when he decided to start going to therapy, but it was when he decided that he needed to live, and he needed to live for his kids. And although he had a really long journey after that before he actually started addressing this in therapy, I do believe that that was a turning point. That was the point when he said, I have to live and I need to get a hold of this. And that was one of the hardest days of my life as a friend and as somebody who loves somebody who's going through something. I'm glad he's here. I'm glad he chose to stay.
I will say my friend Amy has been there from the very beginning. She would always encourage me to go to therapy. And I didn't want to go. I was very reluctant to go because I'm like, what are they going to tell me that I don't already know? Like, about myself and about what's going on. But and I kept that mindset for a while, and the whole time I was doing it, I was spiraling downhill. Separation, pending divorce, ex-wife doing everything she can to tarnish my name and reputation, keeping the kids from me. So I was going through a lot. Drinking heavily, very heavily. 12 to 18 beers a day, or liquor, just whatever I can get my hands on. So yeah, it was a lot, and I was still like, fuck it, I'm not going. But day by day, Amy never judged me. She just encouraged me. She listened, and I thought about it.
I'm so proud of him. I am. He's come a long way. Even after that time, I'm yelling at him, you need to go to therapy, you need to go to therapy, you need to go to therapy. And he just wasn't ready yet. And, but I knew if I just was continuing to explain to him how much more he could be getting out of life and how much more he could be growing, that eventually he would make that decision that he would go.
Say it was a tough road. It was tough. But I know if I can get through it, anybody can. I will say I was hesitant to start therapy at first because I'm like, for what? What's it going to help? What are they going to tell me? Then also in the back of my head, I was thinking like, well, does that make me crazy if I'm going to therapy? Because the stigma was, if you have mental health problems, then you're crazy. When that's not it at all. Sometimes you just need an outlet. It took a lot of convincing from a few friends, but eventually I chose to seek help. And it was one of the best things I've ever done, to be honest. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, to let my guard down and to expose my inner self. But I'm building myself up, and this will help me be a better man, a better person, a better father, a better spouse to in my next relationship. But it's tough. There's times where you might want to stop going because you don't want to hear the truth. But it is good, and to change your whole thought process, um, because sometimes people act the way that they do because they didn't have the tools that we have, vice versa.
The day that he told me that he got himself a counselor, I was so happy. But I remember looking at him and telling him, like, it's going to be hard work, and therapy always is harder before it gets easier. And something that makes me so happy now is that, like, he'll text me and be like, hey, I had a therapy session today, and I don't need to know what they talk about. All I know is that, like, he's always telling me I had a therapy session, and it feels good. It feels good in, like, a way that, like, I can get things out, and I feels good to be growing and changing. And I've seen the growth and I've seen the change in him, just as not only just as a human, but as a friend, as a parent, as a caregiver. It's just amazing the amount of growth that he's had because he's choosing to put in the work.
I can tell you that it is not easy. It's not for the weak. It is hard. There's a lot of emotions and feelings that you have to experience that you've never experienced before. I can say that me being a black man, I started therapy. I go once a week, and it has helped. It definitely has helped me see things from different perspectives, different points of views, not just for myself, but from how, let's say, my ex-wife or my father or my mother looked at things. Because I see things from my perspective, my point of view. But when you get in therapy, it kind of opens you up. It makes you vulnerable, and it's a lot. It's a tough process for anybody. It's especially a hard process because from when we're young, especially being black men, we're told to be tough, toughen up, don't cry, don't show emotions. If you fall and scrape your knee, you brush it off and you keep on moving. And if you do cry, if you do show emotions, then you're soft, you're a bitch, or whatever names have you. When in retrospect, it's far from it. But being a black man in therapy, I can say definitely helps. I myself encourage it. I have no problem telling people about my story, about my journey, and about me going to therapy. At first, I was kind of embarrassed about it because that's how it's made to seem like in the black community, black and brown community. It's always like you prayed away your demons or whatever you have going on, or just a bunch of other things. But sometimes you need professional help, whether it's medication, whether it's therapy. So, sometimes you just need that help. You need to get it out. Mental health is not talked about in the black and brown community like it should be. I do applaud Charlemagne the God and others that are bringing it to the forefront, especially for black men, and telling black men it's okay to cry, it's okay to be upset, it's okay to show emotions. And that's what I do with my kids, especially my son. He's 9, and I always tell him, I always try to talk to him. Whenever I get my kids, I always ask them, "Are you happy? Are you sad? Anything you need to talk about? Anything new going on, or just whatever." Sometimes they talk to me, sometimes they don't, but at times they open up and they talk and they cry about how upset they are due to certain circumstances. But that is a healthy environment for them to be able to express their feelings and emotions without feeling any kind of backlash. And that is something that I wish that I had as a kid. So once again, it's just all about breaking generational curses. The change has to start with you.
I think the best advice that I can give somebody, and this is coming from somebody who didn't grow up in the black community, so I don't have any advice to give on that as far as like what that looks like. But one of the best advices that I can give somebody that cares about somebody who has struggles with mental health or trauma is that you just have to be present. You don't have to have the answers, but just be present and don't be judgmental. And like genuinely don't be judgmental. Don't tell people's business, just listen. See, sometimes we can't solve everything that's happened, but we can be somebody who sits with somebody as they deal with the things that they're dealing with. And that's what I've done a lot with him, honestly, other than encouraging him to go to counseling and, giving him some advice here and there. But quite honestly, you know, my role and caring about somebody with mental health struggles is just simply to help sit with him as he goes through the healing process. He's come a long way, and I'm so proud of him.
Everybody's journey is going to be different. And I will say that for some people, it's mental health therapy. For some people, it's just writing things down. Sometimes it feels good to write your emotions out. Start a journal. At the end of the day, before bed, just write in a journal how you feel. Um, it's there's many different outlets. You just have to find your niche. Um, but yeah, it's possible. I'm living proof that mental health has helped me as a black man, as a man, as a father, and as a future spouse. And it will continue. And it's not going to happen overnight. Sometimes you need ongoing therapy for years because you have so much trauma that you don't even know about. Or you might know about it, but you think it's normal. But when you go to therapy, or when you start doing your research or just whatever, you'll find out a lot of things that has happened to you, that was said to you or done to you in the past when you were younger, a kid, teenager, that it wasn't right. But because that's what you were used to seeing, you just felt that it was right. But a lot of it isn't. And we, as black men, have to want to change and break these generational curses. And it's tough. But I encourage all my black and brown men to go seek mental health therapy. Or if you're not ready to go that far, you could always, like I said, write things down. Or maybe just have that one person to talk to, which is good, but they're not a professional. So they can give you their opinion on things, but not like a professional can. So I encourage all black men, black and brown men, all men in general, to go seek mental health therapy. You will not regret it. Trust me. Peace and love to everybody.
That was deep.
So I guess my first your upbringing coming through that.
Well, for me, depression is one of my biggest things that I deal with. Um, I don't know how to react to it sometimes. And from everything that he was saying, like, yes, you should go out and reach a specialist, reach somebody, talk to somebody, um, friends, family, anything like that that can help you out with your problems. You know, it's a cycle that we all go through, and the fact that we know that we can go out and reach somebody, but we don't want to, is the problem. So I feel like, you know what I'm saying, that we need to change that as black men, you know. So
Absolutely. I think one of the things that stuck out to me with Greg's story, thank you, is he said, I want to be a good person, but I don't know how to, and I don't know where to start. And I think for a lot of Black men in the community, you know, we want to be good people. Not saying that we're not, but there are some who want to be good people, but they don't know where to start because we weren't given, and some families weren't given that foundation or those social skills growing up or those coping skills. And so because we didn't have that growing up, you know, we struggle until we become 30, 40, 50 years old. And, you know, with that, sometimes we cause trauma in other people's lives when we don't have the proper social skills and coping skills and whatnot. And so I feel like because of people like Amy and because of Cecil, you know, even educators like myself, you know, thank God that kids have people like us in their lives to give them those skills so they don't have to grow up without them and causing trauma and destruction in other people's lives. So, but I really appreciate Greg for sharing the story. That was I almost cried real quick.
They all did. It's fine. I watched it. They were all crying. I actually don't know because I couldn't stop crying myself. And I've watched it like 20 times. It's just because I think it's so real. But I will say you are all good people. Like I tell kids in my office, you're a good person. It's just like you said, not having the tools or maybe you're just not making great choices. Or maybe it's just stuff that you don't even know isn't a good choice. But just so you all know, on this panel and out there, you are good people. It's not about who you are. It's about the things that we learn, the things that we know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So we had some people who sent in some questions earlier.
Did they want to?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry.
I mean, one of the biggest things that I'll say that taps into, you know, in his story and in most stories is and it's not even just with Black men, not to disclude the conversation here, but people in general is we all have communication.
Right.
We don't know how to properly communicate.
Right.
Communication in general is the key to every issue, every problem, everything you need a solution for.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the simple things. If you don't know something, you need to know how to communicate to either ask or find directions to the information that you need. And it goes back to tapping into our therapy. Right. It goes back to with not knowing how to communicate properly. I don't know how to say, like I know Cecil, I know he's a therapist, but if I had communication issues, I don't know how to say, bro, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know how to all the time to spit out the words to say, this is my issue, this is what's going on. Yeah. And whether the roadblock may be discomfort, embarrassment, pride, not, you know, that's a communication area because there's something stopping you from communicating. So that's one of the biggest things that I see regularly is we just can't communicate as humans in general, let alone I see with myself, I've had issues with other Black men. I definitely see our barrier is 10 feet higher a lot of times to get to the communication, you know, to get
because you're told that your voice sometimes doesn't matter. Yeah. Oftentimes, that's what you're told.
And sometimes it's just like, all right, but it still needs to be resolved. The issue still need to be resolved. So that's one of the biggest takeaways is just communicating.
Absolutely.
I think coming from a therapist perspective, right? Listening to Greg's story, that's the unfortunate. They sit in front of me at that time, right? I get to sit them in that crisis. Mm-hmm. But technically, therapy isn't about crises, right? It should be before you even get to that aspect of your life where you're like, I'm down and out. I have all this stuff. I need to unpack with you, right? And so the unfortunate thing is we have talked about therapy in a crisis mentality, right? Instead of it being a preventative, right? Like you go to your dentist, you go to your doctor, it's preventative, right? Therapy is preventative care. So if you talk about it before it happens, and then when it happens, you're already ready for it to happen. You're not reactive, you're preventative.
And I love that because that's what the mental health I do is a lot of it is preventative. And I get to give you the coping skills and the tools that you need before that happens. So that when it is happening, I can say, hey, what are your coping skills? Exactly. What are you going to? And don't get me wrong, Greg can correct me on this. We talked a lot about that before that suicidal crisis happened. I just don't think he was ready to hear it because there was just a lot. And, you know, I think it was tough because he did have he didn't talk about this in the video, but a couple months before that whole situation happened, he had a very bad car accident. He almost died in a car accident. He was in the hospital for months. Sorry, Greg, I put your business out there. But for me, it was like he was dealing with that and then the marriage and then all this other stuff that coping skills at that point didn't matter because, and I tell kids that too, if they're not here, when you're in that crisis, you can't think of them. If you don't have them, that backpack's like gone. Yeah. You got to have it in your mind. You got to practice it. It's almost like you said, it's like brushing your teeth or flossing or, you know, practicing your coping skills when it's not that big of a deal.
And I think the other big elephant in the room with therapy is no one gets to look like. There's not a lot of black male therapists.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
Black male therapists in the city to be able to sit down and say like, hey, let me holler at you real quick. And you don't get to talk to people who look like you most of the time when they go to therapy or find a therapist. So I think for men, especially black men, when you have someone that looks like you, that you can be like, hey, bro. Well, I feel you. I think that changes the dynamic as well with communication skills. So I think when we're in that mindset of like therapy isn't a thing, is just because we don't have a lot of people that look like us in this room.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then I think I that's one of the things that I wish, as somebody who does work with a lot of young black men, when I refer them out and I'm trying to get them, there's not a lot of options. And I'm in my head, I'm like, how can I find more black men to become therapists? That is my goal. Before I retire, I will recruit every black male that should be a good therapist in my life, because it's needed, and black female too, because they need to see people.
Yes.
I can say everything all day long, but the fact is that I'm not a black male and I'm not a black female.
Exactly.
I might know things, but I don't. What I know almost automatically doesn't get discounted because I didn't grow up like you, and that doesn't mean you can't be a good therapist.
It's not even just that.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just I need someone that looks
like me. Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna
Right.
get a different response
Right.
from a person, like you said, like that looks like you. Like I feel like the atmosphere of me talking to my brothers will be a different response to me talking to somebody who I completely don't know at all.
Absolutely. And it does, and honestly, it takes, if I do have somebody in there, it takes about 5 or 6 times before I'm like, you can just act like you, right? Just be you.
Yeah.
And even though, because it is hard, because you're not going to walk into my office and,
It's
act
a
the way you would act,
different deal.
because it's
It's a
different,
different deal.
so I definitely think there needs, so if you're out there, you're listening,
It's a
please.
communication barrier.
You got to break that.
Yes. Shout out to Greg, man.
Thank you, Greg.
Also, what I thought was really dope is that, Amy checked on him, she reached out to the last person that she could think of. And so with that, what we need to get into the habit of as black men is just being able to check on each other and say, yo, you good, bro? And not, because we are in this generation, I feel like right now, or in these times where it's almost like black men can't do nothing. We can't do hookah. We can't eat ice cream. Like we can't do nothing. So if we just simply say, yo, Red, you good? He might look at you like, are you checking on Red? Like it's so looked down upon. When really, I need to just check on Red or on Blair or on Cecil or whoever the case may be. And so we just need to get into the habit of really just calling somebody or whoever it is or text and saying, yo, you good? Are you okay? And really meaning it.
Like an ulterior motive to do
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So.
And I will say, I didn't know, just to do that story, I didn't know that his friend had been looking for him. In my head, we FaceTime and talked all day long, all day, every day. And the fact that he didn't talk to me from morning until it was like 10 o'clock at night, I'm like, and I knew where he was going in this. So when I messaged his friend, he was like, we've been looking for him too. He was checking on him too. And the fact that I said, here he is, this is where you need to go drive to get him. And it didn't take them 30 seconds to jump in that car. What did you say?
Greg said, we can't eat no banana, hot dog. Like, damn, I'm going to eat by myself.
Yeah, they said we can't even have nachos for the game where they had, I seen these big old spread and somebody was like, nah, you can't do that. I'm like, well, go ahead and take my car away.
I'm taking those nachos.
I'm about to eat.
But I definitely think it's important because, and I love the fact that he does have some really great friends. And I'm glad he reached out to me and they were able to go get him, because honestly, if I don't know what would have happened if I wasn't able to get a hold of him.
Right.
And that's another advice too, that sometimes because everybody doesn't have those relationships, whether it be friends or families, because you got some people who are out here an island on their own, and nobody's able to see that, wait, your actions today are abnormal. Because nobody's able to pay attention. That's why some of us, like, it's a blessing that we have people where you can have multiple people. So, and that's a whole other side of it too.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, how many people are literally stuck in the dark by themselves and nobody can tell, oh, here, use my flashlight. Nobody can even check on them, So it's
like find your people and be those people. And that's one, I always laugh because he can literally, if I'm in a bad mood, through my text message, he can be like, are you okay? And the same thing with him. And that I'm blessed to have met him. We're blessed to be in each other's lives. It's not been that long, but like find your people and be that person for them. Right. Because when you have those people, you can tell through a text message if they're not okay or however they're communicating.
Yeah. Like I was at work the other day and I had a toothache and my whole staff asked me like, what's wrong? Like, you good, bro? Like they, what I'm saying? They seen it in my face. Like, so just having that reaction from people gives you that good energy that somebody cares. Asking you, what's wrong? You all right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you can tell it. So, I mean, I appreciate that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, so we had some people who sent in some questions. And so Amy is going to read off some of those questions and we're going to answer them.
And this is where I need you to, you're not a host.
I'm not a host anymore. I am a black man. Let me be Ty and not Big T. Yes, I need to be Ty. I got you.
Okay.
I got you.
So here's number one. I kind of I mixed the order a little bit up from what they sent just because I want to do some like general, like this is just general questions for you guys. And then we're gonna watch Big T's testimony, and then I'm gonna ask you some questions more specifically related to like mental health, therapy, things like that. So the first question I have, why do you think in the Black community it's looked down upon for a Black man to share emotions? And as a society, how do we change this?
Vulnerability, right? We don't like vulnerability. We just don't like to be told or exposed to the fact that it can be used against us, right? And I think that started as childhood, right? In a society where we were told, if you fall off your bike, get up, put some dirt on it, keep it pushing, right? Or you play football and you get hit too hard, get up, wipe them tears, don't be soft, right? Because you're around a bunch of your boys. And I think for a lot of us, we just kind of kept going as adults, right? And didn't realize that was traumatic, right? That's just simply traumatic that we are telling boys they can't cry, and no one ever said that was a gender-based thing, right? There's no such thing as a feeling being female or male, right? It's just a feeling, right? Or tears being simply just, I cried because it hurt, my feelings were hurt, I was disrespected, whatever it is, right? I should be able to cry.
Well, and like I said, we talked. Crying is our natural body's natural way of like cleansing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when you don't do that, you're not cleansing.
Yeah, it goes back to the fact that I know for me personally, I grew up without a father, right? So I never had a male show me that feelings were okay, right? Or if I did, it was my friends or their fathers or their uncles or my uncles or whatever, grandfather. But no one talked about feelings. I never remember having a conversation about simply like, are you happy today? Right? Just that simple question. Or how are you feeling today? So I think society just doesn't talk to men about feelings, but we talk to women about feelings all the time.
Like I can cry out anywhere I want to cry. And nobody's they're like, oh, that's fine, you're allowed. You cry, and then all of a sudden, like you said, you're not. And vulnerability for I think guys, there's layers to that. So it's tough for I don't like to be vulnerable. Do you know how hard it was for me to cry on videos? I know. I work with mental health. But I hate crying. I've never cried. I don't cry in front of anybody. That was tough. That's hard for me. But you know what? Then be a man. Be told you're not allowed to cry. Now be a Black man and be worried that your tears are going to be used against you. And there's so many layers to that vulnerability.
Yeah. And I was sorry about that. I was always worried about who I can cry around. You know, so I'm like, I don't know if I can share my emotions with you because physically maybe we got a relationship, but I don't know how strong that relationship is to where you're seeing my emotions. So it's certain people that I can cry around and it's certain people I can't. Like y'all family. Like I was crying earlier when I heard his testimony. So like that it's healing to me to hear things like that and to be able to let out those emotions around good people, you know. So
when I ask men specifically, when's the last time you cried? And maybe you do this too. And are you like, I mean, you're probably less shocked than I am because you're a man. But like sometimes I'm like, wait, what? No. Years, decades.
So I think it's funny you say that because yesterday I was with my son, took him to take ice cream, and he's like, "Daddy, you don't never cry in front of me." And I was just like, slow down.
Right, though. Like that just threw your whole
mental. Like, did I ever cry? And I lost my mom about 2 years ago, and I remember crying, but I was like, he wasn't there for me to cry, right? Yeah. And so I had to remind myself, like, I gotta show him that it's okay to cry, right? And that's a normal emotion as a man, as a father, to cry in front of your kids, so he can see that that's normal.
Right.
So I cried 2 weeks ago. I don't know why either.
But you know what? I like that.
But that's good though.
Down the stairs and I was like, "What the fuck?" Like, you know, like that. Like I was hitting myself to go out the door, and I still. I mean, it wasn't even no emotions tied to it. You know, on the forefront of my mind. You know, so I know it's probably something in there. But like that, as I was just like,
it was just
it came
out.
Yeah, it was needed.
Like I just was like, I was just looking like, You know, like what's going on. So like, it had been a while, you know, because like most of the time for me, it had been related to death for the most part.
Yeah,
we've lost
Because that's acceptable, right? If you're a man to cry, if there's a death, and that's it.
You know, I've lost a lot of people in my family, but then at the same time with my family, I don't normally cry in front of my family because it's always been when it comes to death in my family, I've always been the crutch for my family. So when we're at the funerals and all this stuff,
you got to be the one to hold it down,
right?
It don't matter the young ones, the old ones, being, you know, everybody, you know, and they always have looked to me, and I've, you know, never really said it, but I've always hated that. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, why y'all looking at me like, you know what I'm saying? I need a crush too.
I need to
you know
not
what
be
I'm saying?
strong.
Like, yeah, so it's just
I need a break.
But it's just always
Before
kind
I
of
break, exactly.
right. Yeah. But it's like we don't always. It's like sometimes, unfortunately, it's necessary for us to still be strong.
Yeah.
To keep the rest of the family.
Right.
And that's still hard on us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still one of those things because sometimes somebody got to be that strong person so everybody can get through this moment, and then you know it catches up with you and it wears you down, you know, physically, mentally, all that, and it's just like it's a catch-22 because I don't hate that I was strong for my family, but at the same time, it's still hard on you because it's just like, what am I supposed to do with that? Because who am I supposed to talk to? Because I'm not really ready to talk to them because it was like they look at you and they're like, I thought you was fun. You know, and then, you know what I'm saying? And then it's just like, and then it opens up a whole new can of worms because 9 times out of 10, when you actually tell them how you was feeling, because I have at times, and then now they feelings open back up. Now everybody just crying and now we stuck. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, oh,
Hey, just have a whole crying. I celebrate crying. If you ever need to cry it out and talk, I will celebrate you. I would I'm so glad you're crying.
Yes.
2 weeks ago, crying.
No. We're learning from this. I need you to cry it out more than every couple of years. Okay?
Yes. So I know the second part of that question was how do you change the stigma, right?
Yeah.
So I think with that, the way that we do that, I mean, we're doing it right now, is by having these open and honest conversations. But one thing that I'm so proud of with our generation and the generation that's below us is that we are finally having these conversations and kind of throwing away some of the old thinking that came from our parents and grandparents and all that stuff. And I think one of the big ways, honestly, to break it, I'm such not a fan of gender roles. I feel like people just let people be. We are so stuck on this whole, well, boys do this, and this, but can't do this. I mean, we can't even eat a hot dog or lick a damn ice cream cone or banana or whatever. Yes, a hot dog or whatever the case may be. You can, it's so much stupid stuff.
Why? Oh wait, never mind. Oh my God.
I'm doing all that.
Listen, so when it,
I just hate that. The only thing about it, I just hate that word.
I hate the word glizzy. The word glizzy, yeah.
I don't even care.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, just really stripping away some of the things, you know, as far as gender roles, and really just if a man needs to cry, let a man cry. You know what I'm saying? If he wants to eat a damn hot dog, let him eat a hot dog. But by having these conversations like this, I really feel like that, you know, a change is coming. And you know, the crazy thing is that not only are we trying to teach the younger generation how to express their emotion, but we're trying to heal at the same time too. So it's like I'm trying to heal at the same time while also at the same time teach you to be better than what I was. So what, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, I grew up with both my grandparents. I grew up with my grandmother and my grandfather. And so my grandfather was actually in the military. He was a retired veteran. He was in the Air Force. So growing up, for a while, a lot of things were very dominant. It was very much how you can picture growing up with the military grandfather, you know, not crying and being hard and being tough. And, you know, while you out there with the girls playing, go play football with the boys. I'm like, I don't feel like breaking the bone today, so I don't want to do that. You know what I'm saying? And so a lot of that old thinking, it was really ingrained in us. And it wasn't until I got older and I was like, fuck this shit. Like I need to cry today. Like I'm going to cry. But it took going to therapy to be told that if you need to cry, it's okay to cry. I remember being in my first therapy session with Jasmine Pope. She's my therapist. Love you to death, Jas. I was sitting on her couch and she was just like, I'm gonna need you to cry because I can tell you. Like I was literally trying to like hold it in. Like I'm a thug. I ain't about to cry in front of you.
Right. I do too. Like just cry it out. Like I will. There's tissues.
Yes.
What I usually do is I'm usually like, you know what? I'm just gonna turn around for just a second. There's tissues there.
Yeah.
Let me know when you're done.
Just get it
It's
out.
fine.
Get it out.
I mean, I was literally like in the first session, like, oh, I need to cry so bad, but I ain't about to do this shit in front of her. And it took a couple sessions. It took about maybe 3 or 4 sessions.
'Cause you had to open up to it.
Well, within that, yes. Well, with Jazz, so this is the thing with Jazz, I already knew her prior before going to therapy. The first thing I did before I went to her, I asked her, I'm like, we are friends, so is it okay for me to even come to you? Because I didn't want to have a conflict of interest or whatever.
Right.
So when going to therapy and going to see her, I was comfortable, but I wasn't, because I'm like, I've shared things with you as a friend,
Yeah.
but now this is a whole completely different level. Like now we're getting to the
Well,
root.
I wonder if
Yeah.
that made it
Yeah.
harder for you to cry.
It did.
She was a friend of yours.
She was a friend of mine. And so the first thing I asked her, I was like, look here. I said, we friends, but this was, I told her, I said, now don't be at home pillow talking with your husband about my shit now. Don't be telling my business. And she, yeah. So she was just like, first of all, HIPAA, like, so I don't want to get in trouble and lose my practice. And so, but she was like, no, like, I'm very proud that you even came here in the first place. What took for me to open up was, a friend of mine actually committed suicide while I was working at Tackle. He committed suicide, and that was crazy because I've had people die that was close to me from, gun violence and all that type of stuff. And this was different. I never had somebody commit suicide that I knew personally that was close to me, somebody that was a friend for over 10 years. And so that right there, that like triggered the emotions instantly. And so I went into therapy. I actually had a therapy session, I want to say maybe like 2 weeks later, and I just cried. Like I just was like, fuck it. Like I need to cry. Like this right here, this is serious. And it but it really hurt because I have never I had never heard of Black men doing suicide. So to have that happen to me or experience that, I was just like, wow, like, yeah, Jazz, you about to get all this shit today because this is a lot. So I'm glad that we are, like I said, having these conversations, because I do believe conversations like this is going to change the, the stigma that's around, that type of stuff.
And I just say, I think what you said too about the fact that you hadn't cried in front of your son, you had said that like we're trying to raise the next generation and heal.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my challenge to all Black men, if I'm allowed to challenge, because I feel like I can, because I'm sitting here with Mike, like let them show you heal.
Yes.
Like you need to show your kids I'm healing and let them see you do it. Because if they watch you walk through the process, it's going to show them that it's okay for them to show emotions, not be okay, and to heal as well. Yes. And that's hard. I know it's hard because you're, especially if it's your kid or you're the uncle, or that's my kid. I'm supposed to be the tough one. I'm supposed to have it all together. But if they see you do that, like you said, so I need you to cry in front of your kid.
It kind of goes back to what Blair was talking about.
Yeah.
I gotta be the strong one. Right?
Yeah.
I gotta be the support. Yeah. And when I'm not the support, it's shaky. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel right. So yes. I think that's a lot of men's issues. Like if I cry in front of my kid, is the foundation no longer strong anymore? Yeah. Right? Is it now off kiltered? Is it now a little shaky? Is it now I gotta my kids don't look at me differently? Right. So it's like a layer you're talking about.
Yeah. And it's almost you as Black men, we have to be strong all the time. You have to be strong in front of your kids, your wife, your spouse, your family. And it's just like, damn, like when do I get a time to just be vulnerable and just cry and just let it out? As for me, I have to be, strong in front of family and students and all the time. I'm like, some days I don't feel like being strong. You know what I'm saying? Some days I want to cry. You don't want to do it. But you know that if you are not strong, then everything else it's like it crumbles, So
and people around you can see it.
Yeah.
It affects the things that happen around you. And that's what I liked about when Greg shared his story about his son. Like he had to change that whole way of thinking. He went from like, I never cry to I'm gonna ask my kids how they're feeling and I'm gonna let them cry it out. And it's okay to do that, And I think a good conversation after is a good thing.
Yes.
To explain why all of a sudden I haven't seen Dad crying for.
And yes, Lexi, they do call hot dogs glizzy these days.
Although I will say with your gender roles, maybe it really is equal now because now you know what girls have had to experience for years when we decide to eat bananas and hot dogs in front of you. Just saying, maybe the gender roles are a little equal there.
I mean, right now everybody seems to be pretty fluid in 2023, so I don't know.
All right, I got another question. Oh, did you have something to say?
Yeah. I had cried in front of my kids, my daughter one time, and she asked me like, "Daddy, what's wrong? Like, and I was going through something emotionally. You feel me? And I had to explain to her, like, Daddy going through something right now. This is what you do when you feeling sad or down or something like that. So I had to make sure that she understood that I was okay, but I had to let those emotions out.
Yeah.
You know, so
That was good that you explained that to her.
It's like a bottle under pressure.
Yeah.
Eventually, they still explode.
Right.
Right. But I will say, tapping on that to close out that question, the one thing I do see, especially specifically in the Black community as a whole, men and women, is that the shift, I would say, probably in the last 5 to 10 years to actually publicly talking about is in my 33 years of life, you used to hear about therapy on the TV shows with the white folks. You didn't really hear about with the Black folk.
Right.
All the different shows, and it is definitely a shift to where it's okay if you want to. It's not a problem if you go to a therapy session. Like it's normal. And that's one of the big things I have seen is that it's normal now. It's a regular thing for us to be able to do too within our community. So I think that's a big change. And it's just catching up a little too late. You know what I'm saying?
It is.
We all, I mean, I feel like Black folks, we always behind on things. And, this is just another thing. But at the same time, the positive is we're actually
getting into
it. It don't matter that we was late, but we tapping into it.
Perfect time.
Yes.
Perfect timing.
When you talk about like TV, the biggest thing I've ever noticed was This Is Us. When he sat in front of his therapist and he sat in front of another Black male and he was like, "Oh, I got my kid. Is that okay?" And I was like, "This is a dope moment."
Yes.
Right? Because as a therapist, you're still human. You still have human tendencies,
natures, and
you still have
everything.
nature. So it was like, okay, this is how therapy really can be.
Right.
Compared to like, oh, you lay on the couch and talk to a therapist, like that's that funny stuff.
One of my
Is that ever a thing?
Yeah.
Did they ever lay on couches? I don't know.
I feel like sit on my couch.
We don't-
Like,
yeah.
I've seen it on TV.
yeah, I've never done all that.
I've seen it on TV. Like,
I see
Yeah.
if you cover a blanket over
That's
this.
about it.
That's about
Yeah.
it.
I'll tell you, my therapist, her couch is too small. Because I definitely thought about it. I'm 6'3", and she got a little love.
Yeah, you wouldn't fit on my couch.
Let it be a couch. I'm chill. You know what I'm saying?
I think one of the things that I love, like you said, is just more talks about mental health and therapy on TV shows. One of my favorite shows that I watch is called A Million Little Things. So it's a show about a guy. He had the perfect life. He had a wife, family, president of this job or whatever, and he decides that he actually jumped off the balcony of his workplace, and so his friends are now trying to put the pieces together, figure out why he did it. But one of the people on the show, he's Black, he has a wife, and they show how he struggles with mental health, and so with that, he was going to take a bottle of pills, and his friend called. And that's what made him stop. And so they talk about this whole journey he goes through, mental health and therapy. But him and his dad finally had the conversation because he finally opened up and said, "You know what, Dad, I go to therapy." And his dad, he's older, and for a while was just like, "Why are you going and talking to them people?" and blah, blah, blah. But they finally break down and finally, he accepts him for finally going to therapy. So if you haven't checked it out, go ahead and check it out. It's called A Million Things. It's a dope show. So there you go.
All right. So here's my next question.
All right.
So many Black men have. I'm going to start. Is it okay if I start with you, Blair? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's going to go around. So many Black men have different insecurities from physical to mental. What is or was an insecurity that you have or are currently battling? And what are some things that you do or did to keep growing into the man you want to be?
First off, I see my mom comments. So
Hey, Mama Johnson.
One of my biggest ones, like a lot of people don't know about me, is my weight. Like, like these last, I got a couple things. Let me try not to drift too much. Like these last 3 years, I left the post office. I started working with my own company, which, is a lot more work than like I'm telling everybody. I love it, but it's stressful as hell.
Mm-hmm.
But in the last 3 years, I've gained even more weight than I have previously because I've always been self-conscious about my weight. And everybody like, "You tall, we can't see it." When I look at that motherfucking scale, when I look at the scale, that thing, what it say, and everybody like, well, we can't tell because I'm taller.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I'm at 288 now. I've never been that close to
Wow.
300, and I've never been that close to that weight ever. Most people don't know. So my home weight is between 230 and 250. I haven't been that. So that's one of the biggest things. And I looked in the mirror, after getting out the shower, and that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to get away from this crap. and amongst other things, I couldn't.
AKA Pop. Let's clarify that, y'all.
I was very confused.
Thank you.
We don't.
Not literally crack.
We don't sponsor Fago.
Green.
If they want to sponsor us, we'll
but that's been one of my biggest things is that as a youth, as a teen, one of my things was my looks. My parents used to bother me. Now, after stepping into that, and and just being comfortable being who I am, you know what I mean?
That's what's up.
Like that's probably my biggest things as far as being insecure, which is something you see every day when you look in that mirror and you're not comfortable. I used to go weeks and weeks without looking in the mirror and making eye contact with myself. And if you think about it, most people on average got a mirror in their bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
I would not look into my mirror, and that's even recently. And it's just not being comfortable with what I saw.
You didn't have that self-confidence.
Yeah, I just wasn't. I didn't like it. You know what I mean? But then I got them days where you know what I'm saying. You feel really good. And that taps into that. I don't know. It's like that mental puzzle in your head when you looking at what you looking and you like.
Nah, this ain't
I don't like that. But then it's like, but that's me.
Yeah.
Right.
But when you look in the mirror, like I don't like that, and it's you. So that's one of those things that probably was the worst because you can't look at yourself.
Right.
It's so that's probably it.
It was the biggest insecurity. That's why I'm gonna say this. As a therapist, I have imposter syndrome, right? Where I look at myself and don't believe I belong to certain rooms. And I think for me, it's crazy because people like, you so confident. It's like, if you saw internally what my head looks like, what I feel like, what I'm thinking, you would realize, like, I'm thinking I don't belong. I don't know. I sit in therapy sometimes like, I hope they think I know what I'm talking about.
Well, I feel that, yeah.
Right. And I hope they walk out this room and realize that I'm still learning just like they're learning. Yeah. Right. So for me, the biggest thing is imposter syndrome and realizing, like, especially as I've gotten older, and go to school and get the degrees and it's like, oh, you're supposed to know. And it's like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I'm still learning. I'm still researching. I'm still reading articles. And sometimes in therapy, I feel like I made a mistake and asked the wrong question.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially when they just shut down, they're looking at you. I'm like, oh, shoot.
Right. So imposter syndrome for me is my biggest insecurity.
So basically, you're your own worst critic.
All the time.
I've heard that twice now.
Yeah. Like I will take a look at myself and be like, I'm supposed to be perfect. Right.
Yeah.
Or if I would have did this differently, I would have been here. Or if I would have done this, I could have did this. Or why am I still stuck here? Or why am I mentally in this place? And as a therapist, I go to therapy, right? So I need to process that, but imposter syndrome is probably my biggest insecurity.
And I think too, like you said, people look at you because when they're coming in there, they think you have all the answers.
Right.
And I explain very quickly, like, I'm not here to give you the answers. I'm here to help you figure them out.
Exactly.
And I learn a lot. I think I learn just as much from when I'm helping people as when, that they're learning from me, because you learn. But I guess that's something that if you are going to therapy, for everybody out there, go to therapy, but know that your therapist is there right along with you.
Exactly.
We don't have a magic wand. I always tell my kids it's on back order at Amazon. I haven't gotten that yet. I wish I did.
I got to get my
if I had a magic wand, I could just make everything better.
My card right now.
Right. I wish, but okay. So your biggest insecurity, how you handle it?
My biggest insecurity, not so much now because I've grown to be very comfortable myself. Growing up as a kid, I always knew that I wasn't like, how can I put it? I wasn't into all of the boy stuff, like wanting to play football and sports and whatever. I just kind of did my own thing. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I hang out with the boys, sometimes I hang out with the girls. And so with that, as I'm growing up, you get all the labels. Oh, he gay, he this, he that, he like, blah, blah. And in my mind, I wasn't thinking like that. In my mind, I was like, I'm just a kid. Like, I just want to play with everybody. As I got older, people love to have conversations about other people. And they're just like, well, look at how he talks, or look at how he acts and how he do this and whatnot. And so it made me start to question myself a lot. I'm just like, well, like, do I do certain things, or am I saying certain things? So it probably took maybe 3-4 years ago where I finally was just like, you know what? This is who I am. It is what it is. Either you fuck with me or you don't. And I was just, that was something when I was younger, and even like as an early adult, that caused a lot of anxiety, because I was constantly worried, like, well, what are they going to say about me? Are they going to feel a certain way about me? You know, what are they thinking about me? And maybe, like I said, about 4 years ago, I finally was just like, fuck it. Like, if you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. But yeah, that was kind of one of the things I know for a fact it caused a lot of anxiety. Like, even going to the barbershops. Like, I would go to the barbershop, the barbershop, they be having all kind of conversations. And I would just be sitting there and I'm just be like, this conversation does not entertain me. You know what I'm saying? And so now I'm in my mind like, damn, like, do I chime in so they don't think a certain way? You know what I'm saying? Like, I just want to get my haircut and be done. So that little 15-minute haircut for like it's 45 minutes of torture sitting in the chair. So, but once I became comfortable myself, I was just like, it is what it is. So I go to the barbershop every 2 weeks to get my hair cut. Y'all can talk about what y'all want to talk about. Y'all talk about cars. Y'all talk about sports. Y'all talk about that. If I have knowledge of it, I'm going to chime in on it. But if I don't, then I don't. But I mean, they would be like deep into the conversation. Like, hey, you see how many tackles? I'm just like, nah, bro. Like, I would probably was watching. I mean, I know what a tackle is, but I'm not that deep into statistics. You was probably watching the Super Bowl, and I was probably watching Real Housewives. Like, that's just, you know what I'm saying? So for me, I was just like, I'm just saying. So you talking to me about tackles? I'm over here. I want to ask you, like, hey, so did you see Nene throw that drink last night? And they probably looking at me like, nah, dude, like, no. So that probably was one of the biggest insecurities for me, but it's something that I'm glad that I worked through. And I still have my moments sometimes, but for the most part, like, I'm very comfortable who I am. Like I said, if you fuck with me, you fuck with me. If you don't, you don't.
We gotta take that off of boys, though. We gotta take all that off of boys, though. You can't. Yeah. You have to like certain things to be strong. I always hate it when I have a kid and I'm like, well, what do you like to do? Are you into sport? I just like to paint. Like, we can paint. Let's paint. Yeah. Anime, or I want to draw, or I just want to hang out with do some of the things some of the girls do. And I think we just need to take that off of our young men out there.
I remember even with my son. I remember with my son when he freshman year when he went to high school and he wanted to play soccer. People was like, soccer, like, who plays soccer? Like, you need to play football, you need to play basketball. And my son was just like, nah, like, I want to play soccer. And it's because in the Black community, when it comes to Black men, you either got a basketball or football. So when he stepped outside the box and didn't do any of that, like, so many people were just like, oh, he's gonna be this, he's gonna be that. And I was like, no, my son is just a dope ass soccer player. So, but he kind of went through that, like I said, because he didn't play the typical sport that they say he should play because he's a Black male. So,
in fairness, I didn't let my kids play soccer with us because I didn't want to sit in the ring until I let my kids play baseball and football, and I didn't know any better because that's exactly what I do. What do you got? Insecurity, and how do you handle it or address it?
My insecurities are, I think I'm going back on what Blair said. I'm going back on my weight. I want to get a little bit more chunkier.
Look, you can have all this, bro.
I got something to get into.
I'm not gonna lie. Like, I've been like a scale of like one, maybe top like 170. Not even. So that's my biggest insecurity right now is trying to gain more weight. I have.
You said 8th grade, boy. That was like 3rd grade for me. Right. That was the biggest.
I'm with you on that.
So I have a high metabolism. So I eat a lot. I eat very well, but I still don't gain any weight at all. So it's like I can't grow. Like, I'm 6'4", tall for nothing. That's what they tell me. I used to play basketball and everything, but it's not working for me.
But I think that's I think for guys that's harder almost to even be skinnier than it's more acceptable to be bigger. And if you are smaller, I mean, I think I've seen a lot of guys get picked on because of that.
I will say, sidebar, one thing I got from my therapist was learning about eating for your blood type. So tap into that because that may help you certain things that your blood type specifically need
Okay.
to make, not saying I can't say I'm not a doctor or
Right.
but
some good advice
like that might help you tap into to getting and add different proteins and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of different stuff. So, but you gotta specifically eat for your body type.
Right.
Because you gotta think, it's 20 skinny guys your same type with what is it, 5-6 different blood types or whatever.
Exactly.
Whatever it is, but everybody's different. So that's a different thing too. And then also that taps back into your brain too. Because everything it's all included. I've been learning stuff.
But you know,
Hey, learn me something.
But I think it's important to also think about the fact that we got to find that self-love too. That you are you're fine the way you are. You're fine the way you are. You're tough. We're all tough.
Right. Lexi said we will put Fago on the walls if they sponsor him.
Come on, Fago.
we ain't sponsored Fago.
Hey, they sponsored that. What was the Ice Insane Club? Oh no, they just like.
I don't know. We'll send this podcast to Fago and see what happens.
Way younger than I am to even know what I'm talking about. All right, I'm gonna go to the next question. As a Black man in today's society, the Black man is still labeled as a statistic. Dealing with those statistics today, you have even more labels to battle. How do you find your peace, and what do you want to see uplifted in the community?
I find my peace by doing my music. I find my peace by talking to my fellow brothers, my fellow sisters, meditating, being around my kids. That's my peace. I enjoy that. I love being around people. I'm a people person. That's my all around go-to right there. So
one of the ways that I find peace is which I was kind of happy that the pandemic happened because we got shut down. So one of the things that I learned during the pandemic is two things. Is one, how to meditate. I meditate before I go to work. So I usually wake up about 6:30 in the morning, and I just sit in peace. Sometimes I play meditation music, and I got my oil diffuser popping with my lavender and everything. Sometimes there's no music at all. And now I understand why our grandparents used to wake up at 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, because that is the best peace on earth. So for me, I meditate every morning, if not in the mornings, definitely before bed, and then also journal. One of my bad habits that I have, and I'm so glad I got back into journal, I try to keep everything in my head. I mean, everything from like dates and events and stuff that happened, and one of the things that my therapist taught me, she was like, the problem is you try to keep everything in your brain, and you need to do what's called a brain dump. And so at night I take my journal and I just get it all out. I also have a book that I got from Five and Below. It's called 200 Questions to Ask Yourself. And they ask you funny questions all the way to deep questions. And so I try to answer about 3 or 4 questions a night, and I just write it in my journal. And then also I do podcasting. So here on Mud Talk, I'm able to be my authentic self. I don't have to be Mr. Cleveland, the educator, Mr. Tyrone, the impact director, or Coach Ty with the step team, or whatever the case may be. I get to be me. And so with that helps me really, be in a good place and get everything out. So definitely meditation and journaling are my top 2 things I like to do.
Mud Talk.
You have to do a sound effect, eh?
Always.
Mud Talk.
I knew there's another one. Let our guest talk. All right, go ahead.
For me, I find peace in quiet, right? Like when it's quiet, if it's 10 minutes, all right? If it's in my car, I just turn the radio off and I drive. I find peace in driving sometimes, like just taking a late night drive, putting that 70 soul on.
Yeah.
Simply just driving. I find peace in journaling as well. Like Ty said, like journaling for me is processing out my head, my thoughts, right? There's no guidance. I don't even need a template. Sometimes I just write out whatever's in my head. Let's see what else. And I find peace in just doing things I love, right? If it's whatever, if it's like I go stand outside on the porch and just hear the birds chirp, hear the wind,
fresh air,
just get that fresh air. That as well. I, like you said, I know why the old people sit on the porch, right? And it was just peace. It was a sense of peace.
I really don't know. To be honest, like I really don't know because I'm never fully at peace. Like Ty was tapping into COVID. Like a lot of people don't know, I was happy as hell when COVID hit because it allowed me to take a step back. As both of them know, the different events I was hosting, Cecil, was the DJ for the networking events I was doing. A lot of the different stuff I was doing in the community. Like I literally just closed my door when COVID hit, and it's been 3 years, and a lot of people have been asking me, what's going on. I haven't, the different things I was doing in the community. I've been sending money to people and stuff like that. Like, here you go, here goes something. But I haven't been going to events and stuff's been open back up. I went to church once since, once they did the restriction and I was just like, man, I can just stay at the crib. You know what I'm saying? I ain't got to worry about
still
nothing.
Ain't been in church.
I went to work, all these different things. So it was just, that kind of gave me peace. But then it kind of, with things, it's 2023, so essentially we open back up to whatever it will be probably going forward. This is the new normal. So, I kind of haven't been ready to come back. Like I go out to make my money to put food in the refrigerator, but that's really it. But like, I still to this day, I have a lot of people that depend on me. I have a lot of people that ask me questions. I have a lot of people who think I know everything, which it makes me feel, happy and stuff, which is why sometimes like when I introduce myself, I try to water myself down because I want to just feel regular. You know what I mean? I want to just feel like, because like, and then at the same time, I get mad at myself because I know so much stuff. Like, one of the things I do is like, I can't even watch TV. This is what I do when I watch TV. I'm gonna let y'all in on a Blair secret. So they might spit a real fact on the show, right? So I get on the internet and start researching it, right? And I might need the Wikipedia. So then I read, research, Wikipedia ain't 100%, but it's a lot better than it was 4 years ago when we was in high school.
Right.
But, and I got so much knowledge in my head, like at any given point in time, if somebody says something, I'll be able to hit you with facts. And they'd be like, why the fuck do you know that? Like that's like I can't even watch TV. I can't watch TV. Like, so and that's kind of like how my brain works. Like my brain never shuts down unless I sleep. So it's like when I say I haven't had peace, it's not that I'm not happy or anything. It's just like I always got something because at any given day, I got somebody calling me, asking me for help, asking me for advice. And 9 out of 10, the only way I can get away from that is if I leave my phone or I turn them off or whatever. But then when I pick them back up, I got 30, text messages, 6 missed calls with voicemails. The missed calls is one thing, but then with the voicemails, you like, dang.
So you can't even have peace because as soon as I'm done with my peace, it's all coming back.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know. So it's like, it's not that I don't have happiness, but the last time I had peace, I was on the beach in Aruba.
So vacation.
I see it right in his face, right there. You can see it.
Y'all remember that picture? In Mexico before everybody was like, "Why you got a book?" I said, "I was so happy to have a clear mind to be able to read a book on the beach, drinking I don't know what it was, but
it was good.
It was good." and on the beach, I was a different person.
So
I cried when I came back. We flew back into Chicago. Mindful. If you ever come back international, do not fly back into Chicago.
That will not be peaceful.
Yeah, it's not peaceful.
Chicago is just don't fly back in. Like go to Florida or California or Texas. I don't care. Don't fly back into Chicago. Fly into Toledo, but
don't fly.
But
Toledo.
I don't know. But like I don't know. One of the things is my nephews make me happy. I got one actual blood nephew by my sister. That's a whole complicated situation that I'll tap into another time. And I got my bonus nephew. His birthday was just the other day. Like they run me ragged when I'm with them. But I would say, I do have peace. When I'm with them, I have my peace. Cause like I do whatever. I ain't never bought like Xavier. I ain't never bought so many damn toys in my life. Like, dude. We can't go to Walmart because Uncle Blair. You can
order everything at Walmart.
Credit card. What you want? But like I said, my nephew brings me peace.
So it sounds like you need more nephew and vacation time.
Yeah.
Probably should go on vacation together.
That'd be great.
That'd be dope. Yeah, one of the things my counselor taught me when I first started going to bring peace was set boundaries. I had to learn how to say no. I was very much like Blair.
We're going to hear more about that in your testimony.
Yes, you are. I'm gonna save that. Yeah. Well, we still got a couple more questions.
We're going to watch that, and then we'll go.
I did get a VA. I do got a VA, so if you call my business now, it ain't me answering. That did help a lot.
Yes.
That's boundaries.
Yeah, we talk about. I talk about boundaries in my testimony.
Because there are some questions that were asked that we kind of already answered.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So let's
That's fine.
Watch the testimony.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and watch my testimony. I'll talk a little bit more about my mental health journey, how that got started. So you guys get to see me be vulnerable a little bit. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I ain't cry. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
I'll probably cry in the next video that we do. So all right, so here goes my mental health testimony, and we'll be right back here on Mud Talk. My name is Ty Cleveland, also known as Big T here on Mud Talk. I am 34 years old. I'm an educator, and I am a proud Black man in therapy. So growing up in my family, we never talked about mental health. It wasn't something that we really discussed, just because growing up, it really didn't seem like a thing that was kind of forefront. As far as emotions, I would say as far as like crying, it really just depends on the situation, but for the most part, it wasn't expected for you to cry, especially if you are a young Black boy growing up in inner city. And so crying was kind of like a weakness. And so, you kind of got teased for it or whatever the case may be. And so a lot of it was kind of just bottled up. And yeah, as far as therapy growing up, like I said, that really wasn't something that was discussed in our family, just because it wasn't a topic of discussion. I felt like growing up around that time in the 90s. Whew. So it really wasn't until I became a young adult and really started to let the emotions kind of flow. As a young adult, I really had no problem with crying, but I had a big problem with going and talking to somebody about it. And so a lot of times I kind of just handled it on my own, which was not always healthy. And so with that, I really didn't know how to process a lot of different things, whether it was anxiety or depression or whatever case may be. So yeah, it definitely had a great deal on how I handle situations and emotions growing up. So when I was 26, maybe, in 2017, I remember one morning I was waking up and getting ready for work. And I remember that I could not feel the left side of my body. At that time, I was working in the school system. But within that school system, I was doing 2 jobs at the same time. I was coaching different, dance teams and step teams. I was working at Fame Studios. I was running my own organization, the Impact Program in Toledo. I was doing a whole lot. And so I felt, stressed and overwhelmed and had a lot going on. And I woke up one morning and couldn't feel the left side of my body, and I had this pounding headache. And so I thought, maybe it was from kicking it, over the weekend or whatever, but it was not. And I woke up and I texted my boss, and I was like, something's not right. I'm going to the hospital. I went to the hospital, and they told me it was a good thing I came in because my blood pressure was like dangerously high, and I was in the process of possibly having a stroke. So I remember being in a hospital bed, and they were asking me like, what are you stressed out about? What's going on? And they were asking me this because I was so young. And they told me, being that I was so young, they wasn't really concerned about what I was eating, what I was drinking, because I was, 26, 27 years old. And I remember just crying in the hospital bed and just really just letting it all out, and telling them, all the things I was dealing with and being pulled in different ways and everything. And that was kind of the moment I knew that it needed to be some change. A couple years later, I had a birthday dinner with some friends, and we kind of got into an argument. And I remember kind of just really like going off, and we were in public. Like I remember legit just kind of wilding out. And I woke up the next morning and I just felt so horrible. And I said, it's time to get some help. It's something that's going on. It's a lot brewing. It's a lot of just built up frustration that's going on. It's time to get some help. And so I contacted who's my therapist, Jasmine Pope. She's a real good friend of mine. And I was like, hey, do you have any openings? And is it okay, like being that we're friends, that I can come in and whatnot? And she reassured me that it was. And one of the first things that she taught me in therapy, now mind you, the first session I was nervous as hell to even go into her office. But the first session she taught me was about setting boundaries, and that it's okay to tell people no, and it's okay to, not have to participate in everything, and it's okay to take things off my plate, and that if people, if they're gonna be upset about it, then it is what it is. It's their problem. And so that was kind of like the first step that I realized, that was the inner child of me wanting to please everybody, because growing up, as a kid, you do want to please your parents, you do want to please your grandparents and everybody by getting good grades and participating in this and doing that. And I had to realize, like, you're not a kid no more. You are a full grown adult. And so she taught me how to set boundaries, and she taught me to say the power of no. She taught me a whole lot, and that helped me tremendously with managing my stress and managing my anxiety. And so for that, I'm forever thankful for that lesson. So when I noticed a change in me when starting going to therapy, I realized that I felt a whole lot better. And, the people around me started to notice the change. They started to notice just my thought process was different. I was much more calm. I started encouraging other people to go to therapy. And so that's when I knew that I had made the right decision. I realized that in myself, because my blood pressure was down, for one. And for two, I just felt overall better. I wasn't so angry and frustrated and getting irritated so quickly, just because I had so much built up. And so with that, I make sure to go to therapy at least once or twice a month on a regular. I journal, I do meditation. I recognize signs in myself when I have things going on. So if I know I'm not in a good mood, I'll tend to kind of pull myself away, or say, hey, like today is kind of a good day or whatever. I'm gonna kind of chill at home. Really using those coping skills that I learned from therapy. And so once I noticed that the shift started happening, that's when I knew that therapy was really, really working for me. So thinking about mental health has made a huge impact on my life, and is why I encourage other people to go to therapy. Black men, Black women, definitely get into therapy. This shift has been very helpful. It's helped me have a better relationship with my parents. It's helped me have a better relationship with my siblings and whatnot. Really addressing those deep rooted issues has helped me have better relationships with people in general around me. And so I'm very, very thankful for that shift. And I'm super proud that, I went and got some help and went to therapy and make it on, a regular basis that I go to therapy. So I am definitely happy about the shift that happened in regards to my mental health and my life. So my advice to Black men on the importance of mental health and counseling is that it's okay to not be okay. Um, I know in our culture, in our society, it is not something that's talked about, but it's something that needs to be talked about. We are losing way too many Black men to mental health, to suicide, depression, and other mental health illnesses and issues that are going on. And so it is time for us to finally stop the stigma. And it's time for us to go and get the help that we need and know that it is okay to not be okay. You're not going to have a good day every single day. And I encourage each and every Black man who is watching this today to go and get therapy. Go and get the help that you need. And I promise that you will start to see the change in yourself and the change around you. Like I said, therapy helped me have better relationships with my parents, with my siblings, even with some of my friends, some of the friends that I lost before I went and got help. I was able to regain. We were able to have those positive conversations, and they were able to see where I was coming from, and they saw the change in me. And so I really encourage each and every Black man who's watching the show today to go and get some help, go and get therapy, and know that it is okay to not be okay.
Oh man, that was a deep testimony right there. Going back to how you said on that depression and everything, like I said, I deal with that on a daily basis. Um, it's hard to cope with. Um, Sometimes you need that help. Reach out to get that help. There's nothing wrong with getting that help. Don't be shameful or feeling like you don't need to reach out to somebody because another helping hand can always lead you to a better life. So take that chance, take that risk. There's nothing wrong with talking to somebody at all.
Tapping into that two things. In a common scenario, if your car is driving and start making a funky noise, is you gonna keep rolling it, or is you gonna, at least try to do?
I'll just turn my radio up. I don't have time for that negativity.
But
if you're walking in public and you see somebody that falls down and gets injured, let's go there. Because if you keep walking and turn your radio up on that one, I don't know.
So if you see something 9 times out of 10, you may not be able to. You might not even know CPR. You might not know how to work the AED, but you're probably going to call somebody and say, most people might make a call at minimum if you see a situation that's wrong. And then also tapping back into physical health issues stemming from mental health issues. Like I've had times, the first time, it was crazy. I thought I was having a heart attack, right? So we went to the hospital and everything because I'm having chest pain so bad that it's like right here. And then they like, you healthy as an ox, Blair. And I'm like, they was like, they did a CAT scan, put me in the body, all the different stuff, and then ran everything, had the EKG, all this stuff. It's like, your blood pressure's a little elevated because they said you seem a little stressed, but other than that, everything's good. You don't have anything. And those things continuously can do physical damage on the body, so it may not be nothing, mentally, it may just be something up there in the first time, but your body can only take so much trauma.
Right.
So, it's like they all go hand in hand, mind, body, and spirit, as they say, so it's just not focusing on that, is the same as in those situations where, if we're not monitoring things that need to be monitored, just like, I think Cecil said it about maintenance. One of the things I always say to my clients is, hey, you need to do this way because I'm in maintenance. I said, look, I don't want to come back when things are broken.
Right.
And a lot of I I'll come and do let me help you with the maintenance, because the maintenance is I charge you less when I'm doing maintenance.
Right.
And it's the same way if you really think about it with your mind.
Yeah.
It costs less to maintain it. You know what? My oil light is on. That means I need to change this oil. I need to refresh this. Because if you turn the radio on, it's gonna run.
I don't have time for that negativity in my life. Turn that radio up.
So it's like we gotta maintain, just like how I tell people to maintain their properties. You gotta maintain your body, your mind. Like I said, I blacked a little bit on my, on my physical, but it's all taps into each other, and it's just like it's all connected. Because you ever had a really good day, and I didn't got my back, my knees, my shoulders, all that. But when the sun's shining, I'm having a great day, and I don't really have any stress. I don't feel none of that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like it's still there, but it's in the background. So and that's just one of the things. Like we got to work on keeping that strong, because it helps you power through that. Because I always got pain in my back. I got chronic pain, so I always got it. Yeah. But it's not at my forefront when I'm feeling better.
Right.
When I'm mentally, when I'm
you
strong,
push
when I'm
through
having
it.
a good day, when everything's good, I can push through it, because it's still there. But just like our problems never go away. But it's just being able to have a clear enough mind and doing that proper maintenance. Because a lot of this stuff, like I said, what I've learned in therapy too, is it's learning how to cope with your issues and problems. Because issues and problems are not going to go away. They're here for life. You know what I'm saying? Just like the IRS trying to get that money. They both here for life. You know what I'm saying? But we got to learn how to deal with them. We got to learn how to process the things as they come, because they don't keep coming. So just gotta.
And I think it's important to think too, that like everything starts here. I think we're so backward because we want to do physical care, but like really honestly, your body's controlled here first. Mental health is where it starts.
If you're not in that mindset to do it, because like they say, if you want to do something, it don't matter how somebody give you keys. Like here, this will open up this door, and get you here, here, and here. But if you don't want to do it, it doesn't matter that somebody gave you a blueprint to do it. If you don't want to do it, literally,
Or if your brain just isn't like you're not focusing on the way and the path to be able to do that. And honestly, it's not just about whether you want to do it. Your brain controls a lot of your physical health. If your brain's not where it needs to be, then your body is going to show that. Were you having a panic attack at the hospital? Was that what it was?
At that time, it was just high stress. But I used to have anxiety and panic attacks. Those were separate. That was a whole different thing. My thing was my trigger for it, which was things I can't control. But you know how many things we can't control?
Right.
And my initial trigger was because of death. Like I had a lot of family members dying, and my family members were upset. I was upset, and I couldn't fix that. I'm a fixer. I fix a lot of things. That's my business. But as a fixer, who can fix death?
Right.
Nobody. No matter who you believe in, nothing comes back from that. So that was my main trigger. So.
We're actually going to get back to the anxiety. That is one of the questions I was actually going to specifically ask you about, just because. But before that, what were the reactions? Any other reactions from the video?
I just had a question. So what is the main, what can you do to fix your stress?
Okay, we're gonna get to that in just a minute. All right.
I need to know.
We're getting that is one of the questions, but I just want to let him react to Ty's video.
I'm an extreme advocate of I am not okay. It's okay to not be okay. But you also have to tell people you're not okay, right? People are mind readers. So we have to say, like, if I'm not okay today, I'm just not okay. I'm not having a good day, but tomorrow will be a better day, right? So I'm gonna have a day on Monday. But tomorrow I gotta reset and refresh. So I'm a big advocate on that. So when you said that in the video, I think that was my biggest piece of it.
And you get to restart.
Yes.
And that's a choice. That's a choice that you get to have every day if you're going to restore, or if you're going to carry whatever happened through, and you can say today's new. I'm going to.
Or if you're a sports person, reset it. Use your daylight quarters.
Yes.
Right?
Reset. Yep.
So I had a friend tell me that I was having probably one of the most shittiest days, and he was like, "But you can restart your day at any time, at any time in the day," and that was my dude Tone, and that changed, because I never really heard nobody say anything like that, and it just tripped me out, because damn, that's true. A lot of things it ties back into what I said about communication. Somebody had to say something.
Yeah, you need that reaction.
That's why we got one of the things that I do see about Black men is we don't always communicate, but just saying little things, you know what I'm saying? Like even when old school would be like, man, I see you.
Yeah, I see.
That's a form of communication, but like,
Yeah.
like
Hey, young boy.
because it had me start thinking like,
Can you hear me now? Is it you? Are you muting me? I think they muted me. Working? Can you hear me now? We good?
Are we good?
Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Okay. So just imagine being in your mid-20s and having something that like
Okay.
I don't think people ever would think about your mid-20s that you would have to deal with some of the health stuff that you're going through, and to see that it, like you said, it was related
Mhm.
back to the stress that you were feeling. And I'm sure at that time you're like, what in the world's going on with my body?
Yeah. So I finally got to the root of that problem. And I kind of talked about in the video. I had to make sure my mic didn't go. So growing up, I kind of was a people pleaser. And that came from when I was about 2, maybe 3 years old. My grandfather taught me all the states and capitals of the 50 states, and I was able to do it like clockwork. But it got not all 50. I probably give you 40 of them. But well, Columbus is Ohio. There we go. Let's start there. But I remember when he would have people come over to the house, he'd be like, guess what, y'all? My grandson know all 50 states. Come on, Tyrone, name them off. So it started with that. And then it came into, you gotta always have honor roll and perfect attendance and all these different accomplishments growing up. And so for me, when I finally got older, it still was kind of the same process. So kind of like how Blair was saying, like if I don't respond back to people's messages, they're going to be upset. So when it came to that, I'm like, okay, somebody from the step team just responded. I mean, just text me. Now I got to respond back. Somebody from school, like it was. I just wanted to keep people happy. And when I finally realized that that was not working, and I ended up in the hospital, I said, fuck that shit. Like I'm not doing that no more. And so now I will leave anytime something has to do with a drop of stress. I will leave. I just left my job 2 weeks ago because I was like, this is stressful, and it wasn't even the kids. It was the environment. So anytime for me, if it feels stressful because of what I went through with my health, I leave it alone. Whether it's people, whether it's jobs, whether it's friends, family, I don't give a damn who it is. If it's stressful, it absolutely has to go because I refuse to go back to 2017 and be laid up in somebody's hospital bed. So for me, that was the moment that I knew I had to set boundaries, and boundaries is hard as shit. It's hard to tell somebody no, but once you practice it and you practice it over and over and over again, it'll be like, nah, I'm not doing that. Like my friends would tell you real quick. They'd be like, hey, you want to go get a drink today? I'm like, nah, I'm really ain't feeling like it. You know what I'm saying? But old Ty would have been like, damn, I really don't want to do it, but I don't want them to be mad at me. So yeah, let me go ahead.
Invite me again if I don't.
Absolutely. So, I had to learn how to, set boundaries. So, with things like the impact program or anything I'm involved with, there's just certain times where I won't respond back. If I'm not having a good day, I'm not going to respond back because I know that energy is going to transfer through that message, because I know when I'm in a good space, I will respond back very professionally. When I'm not in a good space, I'm gonna respond back as Ty. Like, it is 10 p.m. at night. Why are you texting me about programming? You know what I'm saying? But now, because I have those boundaries, I'll be like, you know what, Ty, you're not about to respond in the right way. Let's wait until the next morning to do it. Then I'll say, good morning, blah, 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 and whatever else I need to respond with. So setting those boundaries, it definitely helped a lot.
I like that you said
Yes.
about boundaries. I think sometimes we think boundaries is just telling people no.
Oh, no.
But what you did say is part of my boundaries is knowing that if I respond now, that's not going to be good for me, because that's going to cause a lot more stress
Yes.
if I damage this relationship because I
Yes.
don't say it in the right way.
Absolutely.
So part of that boundaries is knowing yourself well enough to know when you can respond.
Yeah. And I do that even with situations. If I know I'm not in a good mood, I won't go to certain environments. So let's say if a friend is inviting me to a party and I know that I'm not in a good space, I'm not going to go to that party because I know I'm not in a good space, because it's unfair to them to have bad energy in the room when they've done nothing to me. But that's a boundary that I set for myself. You know what I'm saying? So setting boundaries is very important, but it's hard as shit though. It's very hard.
I was just real quick. I was just saying, just going, then we'll go through yours. The one thing that I got Greg for Christmas was a shirt that says "Protect Your Peace," and that has been the motto that we both decided that this is what this year is going to be.
Yes,
and it's so powerful. Protect your peace, whatever that looks like for you, and that is boundaries.
Yes.
Sometimes people don't understand. Like people don't understand sometimes if you don't respond back or like reply to their acknowledgement, they're gonna feel some type of way, no matter what. Whether if you respond in the morning, they're still gonna feel some type of way. I feel like.
Yes.
So, like, I guess you gotta give them that little energy or whatever, right then and there, or they're just gonna have to deal with your so-called rudeness. I feel like.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say it's rudeness, but it's making them respect your boundary. You know, if someone is really your friend, they care about you, they're going to respect your boundary. But you don't have to be rude about it. But you do say, hey, you know, after this certain time, I'm not going to respond, you know, to messages. I respond back in the morning. Right. So, but I'm not going to be an asshole about it and be like, look, if you text me one more time after 10, we're not doing that, because then, like Amy said, that just creates a bigger problem, and that actually could mess up that relationship that you may have with them. Because I've seen situations where people have responded back in that moment, and now you're on Facebook known as, you know, as rude or you're not giving good customer service or whatnot. So I would just say, be respectful on how you set your boundary, but also the person, they need to respect your boundaries as well too.
Just like you need to respect theirs.
Absolutely.
It's a two-way.
Yes, two-way street.
So can I ask you, Cecil, because so the question that I had goes back to what you're saying about anxiety. And I know that when it comes to anxiety, a lot of it is just that there's a lot of things that are out of our control. And and this is my research base. This is not me being a white girl assuming I'm Black men. There's a lot of things out of control for Black men in the society and their families and their lives. And this actually comes from one of my friends said that they are feeling like a lot of what they're addressing is anxiety. So their question is, what are some ways that you help people address anxiety? And what happens when the anxiety isn't addressed? And let's talk maybe more about not the physical stuff. We talked about that, the other things that go along with that.
So typically there's good anxiety and there's like generalized anxiety and there's social anxiety, right? So everybody has a sense of anxiety. Everybody has a sense of like, I can worry about things I can't control, right? But when it becomes something where you're like, I'm dealing with anxiety, is where I'm worrying about it so much that it's affecting me socially, it's impacting me at my job, it's impacting me when I'm sleeping, I'm eating, I'm driving, right? And it's impacting me. So I'm driving and I've been in a car accident. So now every time I see a car, I tense up. My body just tenses up, or I get a headache. Or before I walk in my job, I just have this sense of heaviness on me. And so that's when you know your anxiety is becoming something where it's affecting you. A lot of times men don't realize they have anxiety, right? So it's that irritability. It's that muscle tension, that neck tension, that I tense up when I just don't realize, like, loosen your shoulders up. And like, oh, my shoulders ain't tense. It's the I don't sleep at night because I'm overthinking, right? Men overthink a lot about everything, life, children, finances. I'm trying to go through the symptom criteria, unfortunately, in my head, right? It is being restless. So you just can't get comfortable. You at home, like, I'm here and I'm over here and I'm moving over there and I'm pacing. And so that is that anxiety.
We're trying to control a whole lot of everything around you.
Right. And when I can't control it, now I'm irritated. Now I'm frustrated. Now I'm mad. Now I don't understand why. Or I have a sense where it almost feels like a heart attack, right? Where my body just like, my body starts to shut down, my right side starts to shut down, or random stomach aches, random headaches, migraines, right? Where those are different types of ways that anxiety comes out that we don't realize it. But dealing with it a lot of times, there's like, you have to realize what the triggers are, right? You have to identify for yourself, how am I being triggered in this moment? What's triggering me? What's upsetting me? What's overwhelming? But I would say for anxiety, I'm a person that lives with anxiety, right? And I know how it feels when I have anxiety, and I know what my triggers are, and I know how to tell people, like, hey, I'm having a bad day, and it's overwhelming me right now. So I think anxiety is one of those things that and plus I think also as Black men, the racial stuff, like the George Floyd, the Thai situation that just happened. I can name a whole slew of them, right? But in knowing that that's anxiety, like when the cops pull up behind you.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I just had
Scary as
posted
hell.
about that a
right.
couple days ago.
And
Like,
as soon as
like-
and you know you have not done nothing.
Nothing.
Right. And as soon as they pull up behind you, they're not even flicking lights on. You're like, what's in my car?
What am I doing?
What am I doing? Should I turn the radio down? Should I roll my windows down? What should I move?
Or even change lanes, because that's
Change
what I
lanes,
that's what I
right?
do.
Should I pull over into this parking lot? That's a sense of anxiety that
Mhm.
we can't control because just society has made us feel tense, right? Cops have never made us feel comfortable, right? And it's not even in the sense that we're doing anything wrong. You could be a
Black or
straight,
white.
you could be straight laced, doing nothing for the most of your life and still get nervous every time a cop pulls up on you. So I know myself, I don't watch those videos. I protect my brain because I put myself into those situations. And I'm always like, that could be me. All right. At any moment, I could be a name, or a hashtag, or a shirt, or a hoodie, or whatever it is. So I protect myself in those ways that I know it's anxiety.
And that's for me because I help and I listen to trauma all day long. I had to stop watching the news, and I had to like take all most of the news apps except for the other ones. So but
Television.
yeah, like
you a vision.
Social media.
Yeah. One of the things that like Cecil said is I had to stop watching those videos. During COVID, when the George Floyd thing happened, I was done. And that's what they call trauma porn. You know, trauma porn is constantly watching those videos that are traumatizing. Yeah. And for me, when I started doing activism with the CSRN that was here, was when the Trayvon Martin situation happened. And so being an activist, I was constantly, you know, those things were constantly embedded in my head and they were constantly in my face because then it was Trayvon Martin and it was Tamir Rice and it was Sandra Bland and it just kept going. And the George Floyd situation, I was just like, you know what? For me to be an activist, I don't have to subject myself to watch these videos. And so that was the moment where I was like, I can't